What's up, guys? I'm Jared from Carpe Diem, and today I've got 10 tips for playing Dungeons & Dragons with younger kids. So, like I said, this video is specific to those age ranges, about 5 to 8, 9, 10, somewhere around in there. One of the things I want to emphasize is that this is less an organized D&D campaign and it is more of a structured play. Kids naturally have an affinity of playing with each other. They can be from any number of social statuses, races, religions, it doesn't matter. Kids naturally know how to play with each other, and that's something that we lose as adults. However, when it comes to trying to teach them D&D, all of the structured rules and all of the crazy things that are in there, that really doesn't jive with the way that they play. They have very organic, growing, wild ways of playing, and to be honest, D&D is just too rigid for that. So what we do, and what I've done, is we play a game called Adventure. It's basically the way that they already play, but I introduce a few kind of guiding rules. The concepts of dice, the concepts of a narrative, the concepts of keeping an overarching plot line, no matter how simple that may be. See, the biggest difference between playing a game and just playing is going to be with the outcomes of dice. See, dice are a way to mathematically simulate successes or failures. The kids here are still learning their additions and subtractions, so understanding probability kind of falls on what the dungeon master is. So if you have young ones around the house, whether they're cousins or your own kids, here's a couple of tips to get you going. First up, let's talk engagement. These little ones, we all know that little kids have an extremely short attention span, about as short as a tiefling's temper, right? And so when it comes to these games, there are a couple of things we need to keep in mind. First tip, your sessions need to be shorter.
And as the Grand Duke looks upon his... Okay guys, we'll catch this up another time.
I would try to keep these sessions maybe at max to an hour. Now, because you don't delve into so many details, an hour you can cover a lot of ground. In a normal D&D campaign, you could spend an hour talking to a single shopkeeper, but with kids, they tend to move on much rather quickly. Another tip is to use Legos to represent their D&D figures. A lot of times kids will be given something incredible. Maybe it's a hat or a sword or a spell, and they'll forget that they have it. But by using Legos, they can look at that character and understand, my sword has changed from a small, short sword up into this shiny glitter sword. Legos are a great way for kids to express themselves. Do not be scared to let the kids move around their own characters, especially when you're role-playing. Role-playing as adults happens completely in the head, but kids, they tend to need something more physical whenever they're having their imagination sessions, and by being able to hold their character representations and move them around, they can get into character a little bit easier. Here's a great tip. Sometimes kids don't understand what XP is. For adults, that's a great carrot on a stick, but for kids, they don't know why they need to slog through this. So, one thing that I like to do is I like to use candy for monsters instead of minis. This way, if somebody beats a monster, you beat it, you eat it. What a great incentive for these kids to keep on going. And another thing, simplify. One of the greatest things that The Legend of Zelda does is it doesn't give us a numeric counter for life, it gives us hearts. So what I like to do is I like to give them 3 little candies. In this case, it's Skittles. If they get hit, then they get to eat 1 candy. It's kind of a little nice silver lining. And then whenever they have a magical healing item, instead of using potions, I use apples that they can find almost everywhere. If they eat the apple, then they get 1 more candy. Again, just incentivizing their interactions. These next 2 tips both help you incorporate physical activity. Kids have a lot of energy and they think best when they're moving. The first hint is establish treasure hunts. Not treasure hunts per se in the game, but write clues on a post-it note and then hide them around the house before you begin, and that way whenever they get to a certain spot you can hand them a clue. It can rhyme, it can be really fairly obvious, but if they get up and get going and get to run out and get it, it adds so much fun and so much anticipation for that next clue. Once you have all the clues together, then there's a bonus candy monster that they have to get into. Regardless, having them up and moving around is a great way to have them continue to be engaged. Here's another part, and I've done this with my actual party sometimes, and it's a blast. If you encounter an obstacle in your game, why not simulate it in the real world? In this instance, we come upon a river and I had them roll to see if they jumped it. If they didn't automatically fail, they actually had to physically jump over a blanket. This works for crawling through dark caves. You can make a blanket tunnel. If they have to run faster than something, you could time them running outside. Kids love to move around. You know your game, and to simulate what's happening on the table in real life is a great way to keep kids up, moving around, and keep that boredom from settling in. Okay, here's another one. While you're describing a scene, sometimes the kids won't have the vocabulary necessary to understand the scene that you're trying to build. One of the best ways to do this is to use tactile devices. Now, when I say that, well, basically it means this.
As you look on the damp, dark earth, you feel a mossy surface. Go and touch that, yeah? What does that feel like? It feels like water. It's gross. It's squishy. Yeah, that's the moss you find under your feet. All right, as you go underground, you begin to feel the earthy dirt around you. You feel that? What does that feel like?
Dirt.
Yeah, dirt. It's dry. It gets everywhere. It's on your hands.
The ability to actually touch and feel their surroundings is crucial for them understanding where they are and what's going on. Another tip is to use fidgets. Fidgets, be it Play-Doh, putty, anything like that. Most kids, if they're playing with putty, they're actively listening. This is a great way to focus that energy onto something, some menial task, to help them stay involved. Otherwise, their attentions begin to wander. I've used silly putty, I've used Play-Doh, I've used the blue poster tack. That's really good for them to kind of play with a little bit. It helps keep them in the moment. It helps keep them on the table. These next two tips are more for the educator in me. This is something that I think is really, really neat. Dice play such a great role in having them make quick calculations. When you're setting up the character sheets, and they don't have to be anything nearly as fancy as what you normally do, I typically ask them what are their 3 big strengths. I take those strengths and I give them 2 attacks, and I explain to them that this is a D4, it has a lower chance to attack, but you have a longer range. This is a D8, this represents you being stronger as a character. Then, when it comes time to fight, I'll have them roll both and quickly add that math together.
All right, roll them and add them together.
It's 5 and 3.
How much is that?
3. 8.
Good job, good job. 8 damage to the dragon.
True, it's very simple math, but we all know that the more that you practice math, the more proficient and the quicker you get at it. On the same coin, whenever they're going through something and they find things, and if they investigate anything, they should always find something. I keep a stack of Post-it notes right next to me. This helps foster that inquisitive nature that is inherent to successful D&D play. But every time they have something, you're going to find some type of object, and it's really funny to see how incredibly creative they can be with these. So for instance, here he finds some rope.
All right, here's what you find. What does it say?
Rope.
Good job.
If these cards can correlate with words you're already working on, sight words, if you want to encourage your kiddo to sound it out, all of these play a great role in reinforcing the learning and understanding why, oh, I'm in school, I'm learning this. This is because I want to play these fun games. It's a great incentive for kids. And finally, one of the biggest things that kids will struggle with is the idea of failure. In their own imaginations, there is no failure. They just continually slap on new ideas until something sticks. D&D is a little bit different because there is the chance of failure. So one of the things you have to do is help them manage their expectations. Help them know that sometimes the most interesting parts of playing are when you fail. An easy way to do this is to talk about an episode of one of your favorite shows, like Bluey or Spider-Man. The characters in those shows would never have anything interesting to say if everything always went their way. You have to help them understand that this is not failing at something, it's kind of giving them an opportunity to grow. Now, you don't have to use those exact words. One thing that I like to do, however, is if they fail at something, don't make it a big deal, make it a funny moment. But if they succeed at something, even if it's just luck and probability, always be positive about it. If they want to try something crazy, this is where the rule of yes and comes in more than any other time you'll ever play D&D. And finally, my last rule is to just be as open-minded, because the kids are going to make up some crazy stuff. Last time we were playing, my son was downed by a big dragon. He was out of it. He had lost all of his little Skittle hearts. And my daughter was sitting there. She had 2 down and she was about to be eaten by the dragon, and I asked her what she wanted to do. And instead of using something that was on her character sheet or using an attack power, she decided to sing the song of her people.
Okay, Dalton, you're down. Scarlet, this is probably your last turn before the big dragon eats you. What are you gonna do?
Sing a song for the dragon to make it my friend.
She wanted to convince the dragon to be their friend. Now, of course, I made her roll for this, and she knew that it would be risky. When she got it, she actually rolled high enough to convince the dragon.
Go ahead and roll a d20, please.
18.
An 18?
Now, would this work in a real D&D game? Absolutely not. However, my biggest goal as a DM for kids is to make sure that they're having fun. And so, in this instance, man, that dragon was moved by the music. So, here he is. And now we have an epilogue with their new friend dragon that they want to bring back to the king. You know what? I don't know. The idea is this. Be as open-minded and willing to play with the kids as you can be. Remember, this is their first time doing anything organized when we ourselves have been trained by years of board games, video games, and, well, life. The biggest thing is to meet your kids where they are. Don't try to force them into some rule set that's too rigid, too strict, or too complex for them to understand. Go down to the level where they are, to something that they would understand, and try to make it more fun. Understand the roll of dice and how that plays into telling a story together. In all honesty, it's one of my favorite memories I've had with my kids, being able to play an adventure that I made up. They like to take turns making their own adventures, but that's gonna be another video because that's a lot of work on their end to stay focused that long. Alright guys, that was 10 tips for playing D&D with younger children. If you have any tips or any successes that you've seen in your own home games, drop them down in the comments. I would love to make a follow-up video with any feedback that you guys have. If you enjoyed today's content and you want to join a channel that's focused on D&D with younger kids and starting off your first campaign, then absolutely. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you ring the little icon, you know, all the fun stuff. And that's it for today, guys. My name's Jared from Carpe Diem, telling you to never stop pretending.